All eyes on US-China relations, the expectation that the US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin will meet with his Chinese counterpart Don Jun at some stage in this summit. This is significant, of course, because it wasn't that long ago when the two militaries were not talking at all, and it was at this very event a year ago that global headlines were being made about the fact that the then Defense Chief Li Shangri snubbed talks with Lloyd Austin. So watching that very closely, also watching how delegates deal with some of the tension points here in the South China Sea, along the Taiwan Strait, in North Korea, as well as the ongoing civil war in Myanmar. Let's take this conversation forward now. We've got the Defence Minister of New Zealand, Judith Collins, joining us in a first on CNBC interview. Minister, great to have you on the program.
Thank you for having me.
I wanted to just start by asking you about the risk calculus for New Zealand as it relates to security, given the assertiveness of China in the region.
I think we can see that geopolitically the world is quite a different place than it was, say, 5 or 10 years ago. Certainly in New Zealand we feel we have very good relations with our defence partners and security partners. We also have very good relations with China and with other nations in the Asia Pacific and Indo-Pacific region. But we are very aware of what's going on in the world, and it's not as though we're not watching the news, getting the media, but also obviously we have briefings on intelligence issues. Pretty clear that the world is a different place.
There was the budget that was handed down in New Zealand yesterday. There is a report by Reuters saying that in terms of defence spending, that's fallen by 6.6%. Just wanted to get your thoughts on that, given...
Well, thank you for that, because Reuters have actually got that wrong, and they've got it wrong, and I think they've now corrected it. It's because what they haven't taken into account is that last year's budget had some capital spend for Hercules new aeroplanes. Those are being delivered right now during the next few months. Therefore, we don't pay for them for the second time. So that's all that is. But the operational side has gone up. We had a $571 million increase in our defence budget. A significant increase at a time when we have come into something of a fiscal mess in New Zealand.
So it's an increase on the budget, just to clarify?
Well, it's an increase in terms of the spending that's coming in, but it's certainly not, we're not going to have to pay for the Hercules twice. Paid for already, that's why that capital has dropped a bit, and that's because we didn't have to spend it again. It's just like when you buy a car, you don't go and buy it again the next year.
On AUKUS, so obviously New Zealand has signalled its intention to join Pillar 2. Can you give us an update on that in terms of timelines? And also just a response on some of the domestic criticism, in the sense that it creates that bloc mentality and potentially can give more tension in terms of great power competition in the region.
So we haven't signalled that we want to join it. What we have said is that we're interested in exploring that. And of course we would have to be asked to be part of it for a start. We don't want to ask to be part of something that's when we're not actually invited. But it is important for New Zealand to say, look, these are certain things that we might be able to add, certainly in terms of technology, defence technology, a space. There are other areas, but it's really something we look at as a government, as a cabinet, and decide, is this in our best interest? As for some of the domestic commentary, I have to say it is from people who have probably never had a defence or intelligence briefing for the last 20 years, and I really do think sometimes it's best that they just remember that was 20 years ago, not now.
I wanted to also ask you about one of the plenary sessions that will be on that addresses smaller nations tackling security challenges. Of course, China is a major trade partner with New Zealand. How do you balance the trade dependency economic side with some of the security concerns?
Well, I think we've always had a very, well, certainly for the last 30 years, a very good trading relationship with China. And we also have had for many years, 70 years, we've been part of the Five Eyes arrangement. So we, like Singapore, we are always people who, yes, we want to trade, absolutely. We also need to be aware of our shared values around defence, our shared values around human rights. These are issues that we take seriously. So, it's not one or the other. And we've always had a long and interesting relationship with China, but it's been a good relationship.
And just quickly to the Middle East, recently the opposition party has called for New Zealand to recognise a Palestinian state. Is that a proposition that the government is considering?
Well, it would be one that we would have to take through Cabinet, and it's certainly not part of my brief. I've got several portfolios. I stay in my lanes, but it's very important, I think, that we want what's happening in the Middle East to stop. I think everybody does. Certainly what's happening in the Red Sea. New Zealand has been part of the alliance to actually try and keep ships going through the Red Sea. But, you know, I'd say to people, bring back the hostages and let's not end up with any further confrontation.
Minister, we're out of time. Thank you so much for speaking to CNBC this morning.